Welcome back to the Professor Insight podcast, your go-to space for unpacking the complex world of artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and emerging technology, and translating it into something practical for your work, study, and everyday thinking. I'm Professor Billy, your host. As always, we would like to acknowledge that this podcast is fully powered by AI tools from content creation and script writing to voice generation. In fact, what you are hearing now is a voice clone of myself. This is all done with human supervision and manual curation. Today, we're diving into the fundamentals of one of the most valuable skills in the age of generative AI, prompt engineering. In fact, nowadays, corporates are looking for prompt engineers who specialize in this know-how. So we're going to start with the basics, and in this episode, I hope to provide you with a practical guide on prompt engineering 101. Over the past few months, I've gone deep into this topic. I've read the research papers, taken the online courses, and tested countless techniques myself, trying to understand what really works and what's just hype. And through that process, one thing became clear. While there are plenty of flashy prompt hacks out there, what most people need is a solid, repeatable foundation. That's why in this episode, I'm focusing on a simple but powerful model that has stood out from the rest, Google's 5-step prompting framework. If you've ever felt frustrated that your AI outputs are too vague, too generic, or just not what you were hoping for, this episode is for you. Prompt engineering isn't about being overly clever, it's about being intentional. And this framework helps you do exactly that. We'll explore the 5 core components: task, context, references, evaluate, and iterate, and break them down into simple steps you can apply right away, no matter your background. We'll start by discussing why prompt engineering matters in the first place. Then, we'll walk through each part of the framework with real examples and practical tips to help you get clearer, more relevant, and more powerful responses from tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and beyond. We'll also touch on related strategies like using personas, defining output formats, and common troubleshooting techniques if your prompts aren't quite hitting the mark. Whether you're just starting out with generative AI or looking to sharpen your skills, this episode is your go-to 101 on prompting. It's designed to give you a practical foundation you can build on, because the better your prompt, the better your AI becomes. So let's begin our prompt engineering 101.
You know how sometimes you wish you could just instantly get the information or maybe the creative spark you need?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, today we're diving into a way to get surprisingly close to that. Especially, when you're interacting with these powerful AI tools that are becoming so common.
Right.
We're talking about really mastering how you communicate with these systems.
That's spot on. It's really not just about typing in a few words and hoping for the best, is it?
No, seems like there's more to it.
Think of it like having a super smart assistant, maybe. But you need to learn how to give the right instructions, the best instructions to get the best results.
Okay.
And this is where prompt engineering comes in. It's about being thoughtful, in how you phrase your requests to unlock the true potential of the AI.
And that's why this is a deep dive specifically for you, the listener. Whether you're looking to quickly understand something complex or generate creative ideas, or even just make your workflow a bit smoother. Understanding prompt engineering can be a real shortcut. It's about getting the answers and outputs you actually need without feeling like you're, wrestling with the technology.
Yeah, avoiding that frustration. So our goal today is basically to give you a clear and hopefully easy to understand overview of prompt engineering.
Layman friendly.
Exactly. We want to equip you with a practical way of thinking about how to create effective prompts so you can start getting better results from AI, like right away.
Right.
We'll be sharing some key ideas, some examples, just to illustrate how this all works in practice.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks then. What exactly is prompt engineering, like in simple terms?
Simply put, prompt engineering is the process of carefully designing and then refining the instructions, the prompts you give to AI models, things like ChatGPT, for example.
Right.
The goal is to get the best possible outcome. It's definitely more than just asking a question. It's about structuring your request in a way that the AI can easily understand and respond to with relevant, high-quality stuff.
It's fascinating that this has become such a key skill so quickly, isn't it? Almost like a new form of literacy in the age of AI.
Oh, absolutely.
I've even heard that companies are now looking for people specifically skilled in this. Prompt engineers.
They are. As AI gets more integrated into, well, everything, The ability to communicate effectively with these systems is
Yeah.
becoming incredibly valuable. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The better you are at crafting your prompts, the more useful and efficient these AI tools will actually be for you.
Now, when we talk about AI, do we need to be tech experts ourselves? Do we need to understand all the coding and algorithms to write good prompts?
Not at all. No, you definitely don't need a computer science degree to get good at prompt engineering.
Okay, that's a relief.
But having a basic idea of what's happening sort of behind the scenes, that can definitely help you create more effective prompts.
Okay.
In this context, we're often talking about machine learning.
Okay, so just a quick peek under the hood for us non-coders. What's the main thing to get about machine learning that helps with writing prompts?
Well, think of these AI models as having learned from just massive amounts of information, huge data sets.
Right.
They've analyzed countless texts, images, you name it, to identify patterns. So when you give them the prompt, they use these learned patterns to try and predict the most relevant and hopefully helpful response.
So they're pattern matching.
Essentially, yeah, on a massive scale. For instance, if an AI has seen many examples of requests for summaries followed by, say, concise bullet points, it's more likely to format its response that way if you ask for a summary. It recognizes that pattern.
Okay, that makes sense. Knowing that helps us see why being clear and specific is so important. The more defined the pattern we give it, the better the result we're likely to get.
Exactly. And this is why prompt engineering is so crucial. Because even for tasks that seem straightforward, the way you phrase your prompt can lead to drastically different outcomes.
Right. You had a great example illustrating this, didn't you? Something about getting feedback on writing.
Yes, exactly. Imagine you want to improve a paragraph you've written. A very basic prompt like, correct this paragraph?
Yeah, simple enough.
It might give you a grammatically correct version, sure, but it doesn't really help you understand why the changes were made or how you can improve your writing next time.
Right, it just fixes it. It doesn't teach you anything.
It's a correction, but not really a learning experience. Now, consider a more, let's say, carefully engineered prompt.
Okay.
Instead, you could say something like, act as a helpful writing coach. Please review the following paragraph. And you paste it in and provide specific feedback on where the clarity and flow could be improved. Also, maybe suggest one or two alternative ways to phrase the main idea. Keep your feedback concise, under 100 words.
Wow, okay. That's a much more useful response you'd get there. Suddenly the AI is taking on a role, a persona.
Right.
Giving specific, actionable feedback, even offering alternatives. It's not just correcting, it's actually guiding.
Precisely. That more detailed prompt transforms the interaction. It becomes a much more valuable learning opportunity. You've specified a persona, the type of feedback, even constraints like the word count. It really shows the power of structured prompting.
Okay, so we get why this is important. Huge difference. Now let's get into the how. Is there a framework, like a set of steps we can follow to actually create these effective prompts?
Yes, there is. There's a pretty helpful framework that can guide you through the process. It involves thinking about 5 key elements of your request.
Life steps. Okay.
And there's a memorable way to think about these. Well, maybe memorable because it's slightly unusual. The phrase is, tiny crabs ride enormous iguanas.
Tiny crabs ride enormous iguanas. Okay, you're right. That is unusual. Definitely going to stick in my head. What does each word stand for?
Okay, so tiny stands for task. What exactly do you want the AI to do? You need to be very clear, very specific about your desired outcome.
So not just give me ideas.
No, much better to say something like, brainstorm 3 creative marketing slogans for a new brand of organic coffee. Much more specific.
That makes sense. Define the goal precisely. Got it. What about crabs?
Crabs represents context. You need to provide the AI with any relevant background information it needs to understand your request fully.
Okay.
Sticking with that coffee slogan example, you might add details about, say, the target audience, the unique selling points of the coffee, maybe the overall brand image you're going for.
Right.
The more context you give, the more tailored and relevant the AI suggestions will be. It stops it from just guessing.
So giving the AI the necessary background so it's not operating in a vacuum makes perfect sense. Okay, next up is RIDE.
RIDE stands for references.
Yeah.
Sometimes just describing what you want isn't quite enough, you know?
Yeah.
This is where providing examples, references can be incredibly helpful. If you have a particular style or format in mind, maybe showing the AI a few examples can guide it really effectively.
Oh, interesting.
AI models are generally very good at learning from patterns they see in examples you provide right there in the prompt.
That's a great tip, like saying, give me something like this. Okay, we're halfway there. What about enormous?
Enormous refers to evaluate. So after the AI generates a response, take a moment. Assess how well it actually meets your needs. Did it do the task you asked?
Right.
Is the context accurately reflected? Are the results in the format you wanted? You have to check it.
So actively thinking about whether the output is actually useful, whether it's what you were hoping for, and if it's not quite right.
Well, that leads us to the final step, iguanas, right?
Exactly. Iguanas signifies iterate. Look, prompt engineering is rarely perfect on the first try, let's be honest.
Okay, good to know.
It's usually a process of refining your prompt based on the AI's initial responses. You might need to add more detail, maybe adjust the context, provide different references, or even just rephrase your initial task to get closer to what you really want.
So it's a cycle.
It's a cycle of improvement, yeah.
Yeah.
A back and forth. So it's not a one and done kind of thing. You often need to have a bit of a conversation with the AI, tweaking things to really dial in the result.
That's a great way to put it, dialing it in.
That tiny crabs ride enormous iguanas framework. As quirky as it is, it provides a really clear structure for thinking about how to build these prompts effectively. Task, context, references, evaluate, iterate.
It does. It gives you a step-by-step approach. Think about the task, add the context, provide references if needed, then evaluate the output and be ready to iterate. If you keep those 5 things in mind, you're much more likely to get the results you're actually looking for from generative AI.
Okay, but what if we do all that task, context, references, and the result from the AI is still, well, not quite right. Maybe it's bland or just missed the mark somehow.
Yeah.
What do we do then during that iterate phase?
That's a great question because iteration is key. Sometimes the first pass needs more work. There's another helpful way to think about how to iterate, maybe using the mnemonic Ranan saves tragic idiots. A bit dramatic, perhaps.
Haha. Okay, Rahan saves tragic idiots. Let's hear it. What do those stand for?
Okay, so R is for revisit the prompting framework. Go back to those tiny crab steps. Did you miss something? Could you add more context? Maybe provide a better reference example? Or perhaps specifying a persona for the AI would help.
Right, like the writing coach persona we talked about earlier. So first step is just double checking the initial framework. Makes sense. What's S?
S is for separate into shorter sentences. Sometimes if your prompt is really long and complex, the AI might get a bit confused or lose track.
Oh, okay.
Breaking down a complex request into a series of shorter, simpler prompts can often work better. It's like speaking more clearly to a person, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to cram too much into one instruction.
Yeah, that feels intuitive, like giving directions step by step instead of all at once. Okay. T.
T stands for try different phrasing or analogous tasks. If the results feel flat or uninspired, maybe just rephrasing your request using different words can trigger a better response.
Like using synonyms or just changing the structure.
Exactly. Or you could try asking for something slightly different but related an analogous task. For example, instead of asking for a marketing plan, maybe ask the AI to write a short story about how this product fits into a customer's life. Sometimes that sideways approach can unlock more creative results.
Interesting. So coming at it from a different angle. I like that. And finally, I.
I is for introduce constraints. Sometimes the problem is the prompt is too open. If you narrow the focus by adding constraints, it can actually lead to more interesting and relevant output.
How so? Can you give an example?
Sure. If you ask for playlist suggestions, you might get generic pop songs. But if you add constraints like acoustic folk playlist suitable for a rainy Sunday morning, tempo under 80 BPM,
Oh, okay.
you're guiding the AI much more effectively towards something specific and likely more useful or interesting to you. Constraints can paradoxically boost creativity sometimes.
So, right hand saves tragic idiots. Revisit the framework, separate sentences, try different phrasing, introduce constraints. That gives us concrete strategies for that iteration step. Very helpful.
Exactly. It provides a toolkit for when the first attempt doesn't quite hit the mark.
Now, we've mostly talked about text prompts and text answers, but AI is getting more complex, right? What about things like images or audio? Does this prompting stuff still apply?
Absolutely. That's moving into what's called multimodal prompting. Many newer AI models can handle different types of input text, images, audio, even video or code snippets, and they can also generate outputs in various formats.
Okay, so it's not just text in, text out anymore.
Not necessarily, but the core principles of prompt engineering, that tiny crabs framework, it still applies. You just need to be even more specific about the modalities the types of input and output you're using.
So you need to explicitly tell the AI, analyze this image or generate an image based on this description.
Precisely, and provide context relevant to all the modalities involved. For instance, you might give it an image and ask it to write a social media post to accompany it, specifying the tone and platform.
Or maybe take a photo of ingredients in your fridge and ask for recipe ideas.
Exactly. That's a classic multimodal example.
Mm.
Or you could feed it a piece of music and ask it to describe the atmosphere it evokes, maybe to help write a scene in a story. The key is clarity about inputs, outputs, task, and context, just like with text.
Fascinating how versatile this is becoming, but
Right.
it's not perfect, right? We hear about AI making mistakes or saying weird things.
That's a really important point. We need to be aware of the limitations. Two big ones are hallucinations and biases.
Hallucinations sounds dramatic. What does that mean in AI terms?
An AI hallucination is essentially when the model generates an output that is incorrect, nonsensical, or completely fabricated, but presents it as if it were fact.
So it just makes stuff up.
Sometimes, yes. A famous early example involved an AI confidently explaining how to spell strawberry, but getting it wrong. It sounded plausible, but it was just incorrect information generated based on flawed pattern matching, perhaps.
Okay, so we can't just blindly trust everything it says.
Definitely not. And then there are biases. Because these AI models are trained on vast amounts of human-generated data, well, that data contains human biases.
So biases related to gender, race, things like that.
Exactly. Those biases can unfortunately be reflected or even amplified in the AI's outputs. It might associate certain professions with certain genders, for example, based on the data it learned from.
That's a serious concern. So what's the takeaway there? How do we handle these issues?
The key concept is the human in the loop. You, the user, need to be the final checkpoint. Always review, always verify the AI's output, especially for factual accuracy and potential biases.
Right.
Don't just copy-paste without thinking. Ultimately, you are responsible for the final output you use or share. The AI is a tool, a powerful one, but it needs human oversight.
Okay, so be critical, check the facts, watch for bias. Got it. So we have the framework, we know how to iterate, we're aware of multimodal uses and the pitfalls like hallucinations and bias. Are there any other sort of general best practices for writing good prompts, things to keep in mind beyond the framework itself?
Yeah, definitely. A few more tips can really help level up your prompting skills. First, always aim for clear instructions with details. Don't assume the AI knows things. Be explicit.
So avoid being vague.
Exactly. A vague prompt like, when is the election, is unhelpful. Which election? Where?
Right.
A much better prompt is, when is the next scheduled presidential election for Poland? See the difference. Specificity is key.
That's much clearer. Okay, what else?
Adopting a persona for the AI. We touched on this with the writing coach example. Asking the AI to act as someone, an expert marketer, a travel agent, a specific historical figure, can dramatically shape the tone, style, and content of the response.
So you tell it who to be.
Yes. For example, ask it to write a short poem about rain, then ask it again, but this time say, act as a 25-year-old poet whose style is similar to Rupi Kaur. Now write a short poem about rain. You'll likely get very different results.
I can imagine. That's a powerful technique. What's next?
Specifying the format. Be really clear about how you want the output structured. Do you want a summary, a list, a table, bullet points, maybe a checklist?
So don't just ask for information. Ask for it in a certain way.
Precisely. You could say, summarize the main arguments of this essay in 3 bullet points, with each bullet point being no more than 2 sentences. Or create a checklist of essential items to pack for a weekend camping trip. The AI is usually pretty good at following formatting instructions if they're clear.
Makes sense. Format matters. Any more?
Well, just re-emphasizing iterative prompting. Remember, it's a conversation. Don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions. Can you elaborate on that point? Can you provide more examples? Rewrite that in a simpler way. Refining the output through follow-ups is crucial.
So keep the conversation going if needed.
Absolutely. Also, try to avoid leading the answer. Frame your prompts neutrally if you want an unbiased response. Instead of asking, why is Project X a great idea, maybe ask, what are the potential pros and cons of Project X?
So you don't bias the AI towards the answer you want to hear. Good point.
And finally, if you're tackling a really big, complex topic, it's often better to limit the scope. Break it down. Ask several smaller, more focused prompts rather than one giant, sprawling request.
Okay, break down big tasks. That ties back to keeping prompts clear and manageable. Those are great practical tips.
They just help fine-tune the interaction, building on that core framework.
You sometimes hear terms like zero shot or few shot prompting. Can you quickly explain what those mean? Are they techniques we should know?
Yeah, those terms describe how much example information you give the AI within the prompt itself. It's pretty straightforward, actually.
Okay.
Zero-shot prompting is when you ask the AI to do something without giving it any specific examples of how to do it within that prompt. You just state the task.
Like asking, when is Christmas?
Exactly. You're assuming the AI already knows how to answer that type of question based on its training data. No examples needed in the prompt itself. That's zero shot. Most simple interactions are zero shot.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's few shot?
Few shot prompting is when you do include a small number of examples, usually just one or a few directly within your prompt to guide the AI on the specific task or format you want.
Ah, like the references step in our framework.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's essentially putting that references idea into practice. You show the AI what a good answer looks like.
Can you give an example of few shot?
Sure. Imagine you want the AI to recommend a restaurant. You could provide context first, like, India's favorite food is Italian, John's favorite food is Thai, Maria's favorite food is Mexican. Then you ask, based on this, what kind of restaurant should I recommend to India if we are in Dubai?
Okay.
By providing those few examples, India likes Italian, John likes Thai, etc., you've given the AI a pattern. It understands you're mapping people to food preferences. So it can then apply that pattern to answer your specific question about India in Dubai, likely suggesting an Italian restaurant there. That's few-shot learning in action within the prompt.
Got it. So zero shot is no examples in the prompt. Few shot includes a couple of examples to guide the AI. It's about giving hints when needed.
Exactly. You use few-shot when the task is a bit more complex or nuanced, and you want to steer the AI more explicitly.
This all comes down to developing a certain mindset, doesn't it? Like getting good at searching on Google.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. Think about it. When you first started using Google, your searches might have been quite basic. But over time, you learned how to phrase things better, use keywords, maybe use quotation marks or specific operators.
Yeah, you get faster and better at finding what you need.
Exactly. Prompt engineering is developing that same kind of intuitive skill, but for interacting with generative AI. The better you get at crafting your initial prompt, considering the task, context, maybe providing examples, the faster and more accurately you'll get the results you're looking for. It's about learning the language the AI understands best.
So developing a prompt engineering mindset is really the key takeaway.
I think so. It's moving beyond just simple questions and learning how to give effective instructions.
This has been incredibly helpful. You've really broken down prompt engineering in a way that feels accessible. We have the framework, the iteration strategies, best practices, a lot to work with.
My pleasure. It really is all about learning how to have a more productive conversation with these powerful technologies, isn't it? Making them work for you.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener, here's something to think about. Consider a task you currently perform, or maybe a question you have. How could applying these principles, maybe the tiny crabs framework, or thinking about persona, or adding constraints, help you get a faster or more insightful, or maybe even more creative result from AI next time you use it?
Yeah, try experimenting. What happens if you ask the AI to adopt a specific expert persona for your next query? Or what if you provide a few-shot example? See how it changes the output.
This deep dive has hopefully given you a solid foundation in prompt engineering. It's a rapidly evolving field, of course, so there's always more to explore. But you now have the core concepts.
And that's the starting point. Practice and experimentation are the best ways to build that intuition we talked about.
And ultimately, by learning how to communicate effectively with AI, how to engineer your prompts, well, you're really unlocking new levels of productivity and knowledge. It's an empowering skill to develop. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
After putting this episode together, one thing became very clear. There's so much more I want to share with you about prompt engineering. As I was curating, I realized I had to leave out quite a few advanced strategies, especially the ones designed for more technical users and builders working closely with AI systems. So, here's what I've decided. We're going to keep the momentum going with a two-part special series focused entirely on advanced prompt engineering. We'll dive into techniques that guide large language models on how to provide good outputs and how to think more systematically. Perfect for those of you looking to push the boundaries of what AI can really do. Stay tuned. It's going to be a fascinating two-part series.